Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne. Welcome to Mama Paul in the Kitchen. We're going to do something really simple today. I'm going to make a fried egg croissant with ham and cheese, little lettuce and tomato. It's one of my favorite all-time dishes. Now, we've been doing about a few of these food shows now, and we started off talking about how I got into food in the first place. Started off with macroneurotics, moved into a little raw food kind of thing. Along the way, I've integrated a little Ayurvedic thinking, a little food combining, Mediterranean diet, and last but not least, Alice Waters. Alice Waters, not to be shirked at. This gal has got some terrific recipes, and she has a wonderful attitude towards food. I love Alice Waters. So anyway, we were talking about these different diets and everything, and pretty much I've gotten myself to the point where I start the day with a fruit salad. Typical example of my fruit salad is right here. Here's a little fruit salad. Whoa! Little fruit salad. That's a combination of grapes, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, and a little apple. This will be about 3 days in here right now. When I make these, I make them 2 or 3 days at a time, so I don't have to do this every day. I'm really not that crazy about cooking continuously, so I try to double up the things so I have them for a couple of days. So I start the day with the fruit salad, and you take an hour break, and then you can have your next meal. The enzymes in the fruit, the live enzymes, are what causes the flushing of your system, so to speak. So if you take in toxins during the day, if you're, some smoke gets in your way, or you're out in the street and a car goes by, or somebody's screaming and yelling, whatever, and you're taking in toxins, the whole key to maintaining health is to keep a balance between taking in the toxins and getting them out of you. So if you're taking them in, you're not getting them out, then you got a problem. So the thing is, you want to get them out, which is why a lot of people like to do a little bit of fasting now and then, maybe 1 day a week or periodically. The time to do fasting is the spring and the summer, and the spring is coming up, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But get back to where I was started with. So we do the food combining. So I have that first meal of the day, that big fruit salad. Then we wait an hour, and then I have my brunch and my dinner. Now, in both of those meals, I will have a salad and a vegetable, salad and a vegetable. The ideal food combining, you wouldn't mix the protein and carbohydrates. Be perfectly honest, I do that out of those 14 meals. If I do 3 or 4 or 5 that are following those rules, that'll be a lot. I do get the salads in, and I feel like that for me is more important than some of the combining. If you eat early enough, then you can spend the 3 or 4 or 5 hours to digest all your food. If you're eating very late at night and going to go to bed, you don't want to do that. You want to get that food digested in your system before you hit the pillow at night. So, like I said, I get the salad and the vegetable in on both meals. I frequently violate the rules. The one rule you can break that works is the fish and rice. You can mix fish and rice together. It's the one. There's always an exception to every rule. If there wasn't a rule, it wouldn't have an exception. Now, for breakfast, I generally eat. I might have Hawaiian-style rice with a poached egg. I made the meal last week I showed you with the buckwheat, my mock corned beef hash with the poached egg. I'll do oatmeal soon as we're getting into the spring. I'll do more polenta in the summer. Basic breakfast, but I will have a croissant frequently. And if there's any bread that I'm going to eat, it's going to be a croissant. And this is the croissant I've got here today. This comes from my local health food store. These guys have nailed the recipe. I mean, these are absolutely fantastic. The two breads that I really like are croissants and bagels. Bagels I really can hardly eat at all. I have a emphysema problem. So wheat in general will cause mucus buildup. So if I'm eating bagels every day, my breath is literally taken away. And I used to swim before the pandemic came. And if I was eating bagels every day, it would affect my swimming. I wouldn't be able to swim the mile. Switching over to croissants, I can get away with taking in more bread. And the difference is, croissants are made with a pastry flour, which is a low gluten flour. Whereas bagels are made with a high gluten flour, and they add gluten. So they use what they call a high ratio get the bagel again. When they're making a bagel, they use a high ratio flour and they add gluten, which is why bagels are so chewy and delicious. Once you get into something more like a croissant, it's more like a phyllo kind of a dough. And it's a really low gluten level. So in terms of gluten levels, most of your breads are around 10, 11, 12. A croissant, the bagel is like a 13 or 14. And croissants, if they're made right, are going to be around a 7. So I could eat croissants almost every day and not have any bad reactions to them at all. It depends on the baker who's making the croissants. If you're going to buy commercial croissants that were made by Sara Lee, read the label. If it just says wheat flour, then it's a high ratio flour and it's not going to be as light and airy. If it says pastry flour, then you're in business. So that's what you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to do the croissant. And what started this, I'm going to use an egg. I have 2 eggs in front of me here. Now I usually buy Clover eggs, which are reasonably priced. And there's been another brand I've been looking at for ages called Alexander Kids. And I decided to buy them this last week, and they're a little pricey. In fact, a half a dozen of these cost what about a dozen of these cost. So they're pricey eggs, but these chickens are not only officially out in the yard, and by that I mean if you've read Michael Pollan's book about farming a couple of years ago, one of his best practices about food, he visited a whole bunch of dairy or chicken factories, chicken places where they have the chickens, and they would say that the chickens were grass-fed. Well, that meant was they opened the door towards the end of their stay before they were going to be butchered. They would open the door and leave the door open for a little bit for about 14 inches around the whole place. And this technically qualified as grass-fed type of thing. I don't know whether there's been alterations for that, but most of the eggs I buy are a little bit better than that. And the Alexander Kids eggs, these are just absolutely unbelievable. These kids swear that they are nest laid and hand gathered. The eggs are absolutely beautiful, big, solid, beautiful eggs. But the funny thing was, when I made the poached egg last week for the hash dish, for the buckwheat hash dish, I was dropping the egg in the boiling water and stirring it, and the white holds around to the egg really well. Well, I noticed with these more expensive eggs, the yolks are just incredibly delicious and everything, but the white, the protein, the white part of the egg was not holding when I stirred it around. It was sort of scattering all over the place. And to tell you the truth, I don't know what that's all about, but we're going to use that egg today. So I'm going to have a croissant, we're going to have the egg, I'm going to put ham and cheese on it, and both of these are Organic Valley products, and they're both Organic Valley, so they're both USDA organic, non-GMO, humanely raised pork, and the Swiss cheese. I don't know whether the Swiss cheese was humanely put holes in it or not, but pasture-raised cows, so we're good. Little organic romaine lettuce, and this absolutely gorgeous tomato. I sliced this earlier. This it's an heirloom tomato, and the color, it's somewhere between a really deep purple and almost black. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and the tomato itself is yummy. All right, so I'm going to cut the croissant, and what's going on, I had a little technical difficulty, which you may have noticed if you're watching any of my shows. The last show went up and we had a serious problem with the audio clipping. And I did the show earlier, and I was winding up with the audio cutting off completely. So I'm in the middle of sending a huge complaint to the camera people to see what's going on here. I'm getting some intermittent problems. So if something happens here, it's my fault, no doubt about it, because it's always my fault. So anyway, I cut this, and I sort of faked it. I actually had previously cut it, but I just wanted to do it on the air. So we're going to put this, I'm going to line this up in the toaster oven, and then we'll get to cooking the egg. This whole thing isn't that big a deal, and it's pretty quick, actually. So I got that. I'm not going to turn that on until after I get the egg going. So what we'll do is Let's get a little bit. I like to mix a little bit of butter with a little bit of the oil that I use. And I've shown you before that I use this combination of coconut oil and sesame, 50-50. I keep it in an opaque container so it doesn't get a lot of light in it. And I keep it near the pilot on the stove, so in the winter when it's cold, the coconut oil will solidify up, and you'll have to let it, it's more difficult to get it out. So in this case, it's not difficult. We get it out real easily, and we're in business. Let's turn the flame on. I think Steve noticed last time we did the show, I left the flame on in back of me. It frequently happens, I've noticed, which is why what I say that I'm doing here, we're practicing doing these shows. I'm practicing to get the rhythm down so I can remember to turn things off when I need to, and close doors in back of me and all this type of stuff. Okay, I moved the whole table back so I wanted to get closer to the stove here. I used a non-stick pan today, and the reason I did that is because of the whole egg thing. With the egg and the cheese and the ham, it'll be easier to deal with this in a non-stick pan. I would probably wind up using more oil if I went into my either my iron or my steel. So what I'm going to do is going to break the egg into, and we'll let that start to cook up a little bit. And we'll put a little salt and pepper on it. Now it's funny about salt and pepper. I'll bet you I didn't use salt. Ooh. I probably haven't used salt for about 20-30 years. I stopped using salt when I originally got into macrobiotics because the group that I wound up with, there was so much salt in the diet that this one group of them sort of got down on the salt. There's so much salt in most of your vegetables that you hardly really need to use it. The more you use, the tighter it makes you. It's not the greatest thing to be using a lot of salt, so I've used very little. As I'm getting towards the end, I'm using more because it will just add more flavor and taste. And pepper, you always want to use that fresh pepper. You don't want to ever use pepper that's been sitting in a shaker and just shakes right out. It's nutritionally deficient and is actually causative of irritation. So I get the egg going, and then what I'll do is I'll generally just squash the yolk in the egg. I don't want to, well, let's if I can flip it this way more. Squash the yolk in the egg. And then what I'm going to do is, when it's almost cooked, I'm going to put the ham and cheese on the egg, and two little slices of ham, and one piece of cheese. Cheese is another thing. During the whole macrobiotic era, I hardly touched cheese or dairy products at all. And in general, I haven't eaten much cheese until the pandemic, until the pandemic hit. And since then, I have definitely been adding more cheese into my diet, and there is more sniffles going on for me on a regular basis. So let's put the cheese over there, the ham is over there, and we're going to get the cheese on the egg. And I want to cover, especially the yolk, I want to cover the yolk with it. I'm going to let the cheese get, so the cheese is going to melt in, but I'm going to put the ham on top of the cheese so that when I flip it, it won't have the cheese sticking all over the entire pan. We'll get that going there. Turn the toaster oven on at low. I've got a plate handy. And the only other thing we're going to need is a little bit of lettuce and a couple of slices of tomato. I'll get rid of the end of the lettuce. This is a nice little baby romaines. Terrific time of year for produce right now. It's starting to, it's been a rough year because of the virus and everything, which has caused a lot of distribution problems, to say the very least. And right now we're getting, well, if you keep your eyes out in the store, you'll notice they look like scallions, but they're garlic greens. And these just came out this week, the garlic greens. These are just, I really like to cook with these. And I'm not supposed to do much garlic, but a little bit and fresh like this is the way to go. Alrighty, we'll pat down the lettuce. Keep our eye on the, I can hear the egg in back of me. It's almost done. I would say it's just about done. So there's the egg in there. So the ham is over the egg and the cheese. We'll give it a nice little flip. And bada bing. It's got enough heat in the pan just to finish it off. I would say we're done. Let's get the bread out of the toaster. The croissants are really light, so you don't want to keep them in there. You don't want to over toast the croissants. You'll burn the edges really easily. The bagel can be in there for like 2 full rounds, but the croissant, it doesn't. It needs about half as much. So I'm just going to add a little lettuce here, a little lettuce there, and well, all right. We're going to cut a tomato. So if we cut a tomato, we should. It doesn't hurt to give a few slices to the stone, about a 15 degree angle. Come down, bring it to the side, sort of make a J shape is what I discovered there last time. And we can go the other way too. Give a few, and this is that nice new knife that was left to me by my German baker friend. He was actually selling these knives. Gude, G-U-D-E, good knife. It's a good knife, and a little sword to take the edge off. Okay, alrighty, and here, and we'll get 2 nice little. It's always nice when you're cutting a tomato and you don't have to struggle or put the point in first, or you always want to have a nice sharp blade when you're cutting a tomato. That's the biggest thing I've ever noticed, especially for tomatoes. Some vegetables I don't care as much about, but tomatoes, because of their delicate nature of their skin, I should have taken the edge off the top there. Okay, beautiful tomato. We'll get rid of the chopping block, and here we go. Whoa. Look at this. Plating the food. 2 tomatoes over here, lettuce on top. Oh my God. I'm going to get the knife over here, clean this off a little bit. Have we got the flame off? The flame is off. Okay, the flames are off. Watch it back. Wipe my hands off a little bit. Clean off the screen. And I brought a little chair in here to sit down with. I'm going to have a little bite of this. I realized I did a couple of shows and I didn't actually, well, I didn't eat the buckwheat hash dish at the end of it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just cut this there. I'll make this to go a lot of times, and what I'll do is I'll put it in a plastic bag. I've been known to eat in the car, and I'll put it in a plastic bag so that I can sort of peel it down. That's the way I used to work with the brown rice tofu sandwiches. Now, I guess we don't need the chair. Let's just have a bite and see how this is. I'll tell you. Wow. I can see why people don't eat too much on these food shows. It's the whole chewing thing. It's the first time I've done that. Boy, was that delicious. That was absolutely delicious. The croissants are spectacular. The egg is just yummy. The yolk is just rich. And the ham and cheese. My mother was Irish and German. My father was French. If I went a meal that didn't have meat in it, it was shocking. I opened the day with bacon and eggs. I would go to school. My mother would make me 3 sandwiches every day, 2 ham and cheese and a roast beef sandwich. And dinner would be pork chops and mashed potatoes steak and eggs. I would eat meat 3 times a day. Definitely no food combining, barely ate any salads. So this particular little dish at least has some tomatoes on it, which, well, I'm not sure which category the tomatoes are in, but it has a little bit of lettuce. Sometimes I might throw a few more vegetables on this also. Absolutely spectacular. I'm going to leave it to the side right now. Put it over there. We're going to call it quits for the day. I'm going to leave it at 20 minutes for the day and say that when I eat something like this, if you're in a dietary regimen, you want to follow the regimen pretty regularly, but don't do it continuously, especially if it's a diet or it's a regimen. You're going to feel restricted. If you go on a fast, for instance, you feel restricted. You're used to eating a lot of different things all the time. And you go on a fast, well, at a certain point, you start to imagining all these things you haven't eaten. And at the end of a fast, and I've done this, and I'll talk about this when I talk about fast, you can really get yourself screwed up by eating everything that you wanted to eat that you haven't eaten. So if you're in a dietary regimen and you're either counting calories or cutting out certain foods or anything like that order, and if you do it day after day after day, it's okay. But at the end of the week, take a break. Break the rules. Do something different. Don't restrict yourself so much that you feel like your hands are tied. If your hands are tied, you're going to want to break them open. If you restrict yourself too much, you're going to hurt yourself emotionally. It'd be better to cheat on the diet a little bit and take the pressure off. So you relieve a little bit of pressure so you don't keep building the pressure up. So if I need something like a sandwich like this once a week, if I need something like this once, well, I'll have one once a week. Or maybe twice a week. And maybe 5 days of the week I'll eat really well, and the other 2 I'll be more recreational. This is more recreational for me. And that's the advice I would give. If you're on any of these dietary regimens and you feel like the least bit restricted, like, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, do it. Do it. Do it. Do it regularly to take a little bit of that pressure off, and you'll feel better. Your mental state is important of what's going in. So what's going in isn't just the food you take in, it's the mental that's going on also. It's all a holistic package. And that's all I got for the day. So I hope we're going to have not any problems with the audio on this. And maybe this whole thing is cleared up by now. I hope it has. Peace, patience, and persistence. We'll see you as soon as we can. Whoops, didn't go.